I'm Peter Duke, and Tracy Connors and I are joined today by with it by
Bye.
by Addy Adds, the author of the book Public Intelligence: The Rise of Synergistic Truth, and we're going to talk about the book today. How you doing, Addy?
I'm doing great, Peter and Tracy. Thanks for having me on, guys. I love the production, and I haven't listened to all your podcasts, but if I see a guest I like,
Just
I usually
lie to
tune
us,
in.
Addy, and say you watch every week. We see you in the comments sometimes.
That's right. We
Yeah,
see.
yeah. I usually, if I do pop in, I usually say something. So, although sometimes I'll do the lurking, as they call it, on Reddit. But yeah, you guys are doing great, and then thanks for having me on the show. It is an honor to join the list.
Lurking on Reddit.
Yeah, if you go on Reddit and you don't post, you're called a lurker or someone
Uh,
who lurks. So if you're just kind of perusing and browsing and you never post anything, that's what they call them
I,
as
I,
lurkers.
I was just trying to figure out if we're on Reddit and I don't know it.
Oh no, I don't think so. Are we, Tracy?
No.
Anyway, so tell us about this book, Public Intelligence. How did
Yeah,
how
so
how did how did you come to write this thing?
it's a good question. It's I was actually thinking about it just before the show. Now it's kind of a framework for truth that takes a couple different ways of looking at information and analyzes it. And it's not strictly technical or strictly biographical or anthological or even just strictly about people. It's kind of a combination of all of that as I look into legacy media, and I kind of start with Operation Mockingbird, and I unpack that. And for I think people like us, it can be quite basic information to know or to build off of once you have that knowledge. But it is I think harder for other people to come to terms with that. So I made sure I cited it well, and then I go into intelligence agencies, particularly World War II's inflection point and influence on intelligence internationally, particularly, but intelligence agencies in general were quite transformed during that time period, out of necessity and out of desire to achieve their goals and prepare for greater extension of that sort of power that intelligence garners people who know it. Information is power, as some people say. But Peter Duke is actually in the book. I wrote a chapter on Peter, and we've met at several charrettes. His photography actually appears in more than one chapter, and I made sure to cite Peter's website on whenever I used it. I know he shot Ryan Dawson when we met up in California, and so I think Peter shot for Ryan Dawson's chapter as well, which was great. So hopefully I can garner a modicum of traffic towards Peter's way as a result of my book. But Peter's chapter was pretty unique because I think the only other chapter I really did a quote collection with was Jeffrey Prather, where there was these quotes or ideas that I wanted to share, but I couldn't really find a way to fit it into the framework of the chapter without it just kind of looking disjointed. So I just collated all the quotes that I wanted to include. So I did that for Peter's chapter as well. But I mentioned breaking through, intelligence breaking through, and I actually go over as a case study the Burbank Battle of Tinhorn Flats, as Peter coined it, which I believe that term is mainstream now. So I use that as an example and explain what the term is too. And an instance I also show where intelligence doesn't break through, but is nonetheless correct. Is I think it was an example I used on George Webb's chapter. Oh, with the Russia Gate, which actually has the tie to Peter as well, because I think the quote was George figured it out in like 2 weeks, but it never broke through. So it really didn't have the effect that it should have or could have had. So go into all that and a little bit more. As other people mentioned, besides that, I think there's probably, I actually don't know, a dozen or so, 2 dozen. No, I actually don't know how many how many people are listed? Probably 12.5 or so, around there. But it's 1995 paperback, and then the ebook is $2, and there's a difference between them if you want to get everything that's up to date out of. It looks like the ebook might have updated, which is good, but the paperback has the most revised edition. In addition to I think the introduction and the outro talking about technology and systems of information, I think is a little more beefed up in the paperback as well. But yeah, just a framework for truth. I think not so much aimed at the serious researcher, but trying to make it more appealing for the lay people.
Yeah, it's interesting because Edward Snowden posted a thing on his Substack a couple of days ago, where he was talking about all of the different kinds of conspiracy theories. And the one thing that he didn't really touch on that much, that he got criticized a little bit for in the comments, is just the idea that it seems like the word conspiracy is associated with something that's not true. And the reason that Tracy and I, started having our conversations in the first place that led us to this podcast was the idea that we were trying to figure out what was true and, what was real. Because it seems like, well, you go through this exercise, right? Which is that you start off by consuming whatever it is that your teacher in school or the mainstream media is telling you. And then you get to a breakthrough point where you start realizing that things aren't really put together that way, or at least the way that they're being presented. And then you discover people like George Webb who lead you down this path where you start looking at metadata. You start looking at all of the different facts that are associated with the circumstance and start kind of constructing your own reality of that thing. And then you start bumping into conspiracy theories that either confirm or refute whatever it is that the ideas that your metadata has led you to. And then at the end of the day, you're kind of like left with this, like, well, what is actually going on? What is the truth? And I think that one of the things that you kind of point to is that I think a lot of the people in your book are what would be referred to in research as primary sources. There are people who have actually gone out and done things. They've been, Prather. I've got my own criticisms of Prather, but you can't take his resume away from him. I mean, he's been there, he's done that, and so that gives him a certain amount of credibility in my book, regardless of things like, I don't know, the 2 weeks before the January 6th thing, the 2 weeks before the election, and then the 2 weeks before the January 6th thing, Prather was still kind of, I wouldn't call him a Q guy, but he kind of was, and he was
I think he definitely was.
So
he's, I know who it is. It's Ezra, whatever his face was.
Ezra Watnick. Yeah, Ezra Cohn Watnick, and
everything's going to be okay. We've got the watermarked ballots. It's like, no, dude.
Yeah.
You don't. Every county prints their own. It's all different. Like, I know this stuff because I worked elections, but.
So I thank you for reminding me, Tracy. Likewise. I mean, a lot of us kind of like fell into that, right? But again, it goes back to I know what the metadata is. I know what the truth is about the metadata. Oh, here's a theory that fits the metadata that I know. It must be true. And oops, it turns out that it's not true. Or whatever the circumstances or the assumptions that you were making based on the information that you were getting. There was another guy that was like, he was tracking airplanes. He was a air traffic controller in the military, and he was looking at planes going in and out of Guantanamo, and he was convincing everyone that the perpetrators had all been rendered and taken to Guantanamo and all of this stuff. It's like none of that turned out to be true. So anyway. Yeah.
And
I digress.
People who still believe that like Comey's been convicted under a military tribunal, that certain people are dead. Like there are people that think Hillary Clinton is dead, and a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I do kind of recall that time period. There was a lot of people that were very sure we were winning, This is what winning feels like. But I try not to be, as you mentioned, too critical when someone is mostly on the ball, most of the time. But you're right. I mean, you should always be wary of, I think, every source and everybody in times like this. I've actually heard the phrase "I don't trust anyone" in this in Atlanta area, probably more than anywhere else that I've been the last year or so. But really, it is the climate too, in the times that we're in, the low trust in all information. Really, it's kind of similar to just in that aspect, a wartime scenario where you don't know who to trust, and you're careful about who to trust because the consequences could be life and death or worse, depending on the situation. So it does make me think of that. And I always try to vet people. And again, I don't agree with everybody who I wrote about. And there's some people who I wrote about that I really only included because they've done one great thing. Oh, but I mean, I don't say that explicitly. I do say, I think in the author's note, that I don't deem everyone to be of the same ability, but I think they all brought something unique to the table. And I think anybody who is doing great work in this space is doing that. They're bringing something unique, something new, or a fresh spin on something instead of copying other people. So
Yeah, so let's take it back to the meta of of public intelligence and what that is. I think that you've laid out there's kind of like three different ways that information flows. You have three different kind of network flows. Maybe you could go over that a little bit.
Yeah, so I analyzed centralized, decentralized networks, and then a distributed network, which is a type of decentralized network. And I analyzed a bit the pros and cons of the three networks mentioned, and which ones are better for which instances. A centralized network is basically one that has a single node at the center that controls everything. Social media networks are often centralizized, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. They'll have centralized servers somewhere.
Or in Great Britain, they call it the Big Brother Corporation, the BBC.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, BBC is centralized. Most government entities and institutions in general are by nature centralized in a physical location, which is one of the characteristics that really differentiates it from a distributed or decentralized network, is the lack of a need to have that physical proximity insofar as a centralized server. And a distributed server or decentralized server would be, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, although they differ, and I'm not an expert on Bitcoin, they're based off decentralized networks as opposed to a centralized.
Well, I think that's one of Max Kaiser's big criticisms of what he calls shitcoins, is that they're not, that Bitcoin is really the only one that is decentralized. I'm not a complete expert on the infrastructure of all those other coins, but
there are others, I think, that run a similar protocol where you can be your own network node, which for people who don't understand that, it's like you're a network booster, you keep the network running, as opposed to like I've got my Comcast sitting over here and I get my network from them.
Right. So I guess Clay Shirky, who I think teaches sociology of technology at New York and NYU, would probably talk about how, in looking at your different network diagrams, how one of them is kind of more optimized for speed and the other one is optimized for robustness. But the problem that you've got in the robust network is that there's a signal to noise problem. So, you've got the ability for people to inject, getting back to the kind of Q-like examples that we gave earlier. It's like you can have a lot of good information floating around, but it only takes a little bit of bad information in order to kind of discredit the source or the contention that's being made in any particular event. And that seems to be the the standard kind of counterintelligence operation. Whether or not, nobody ever asked John Podesta about what he meant with hot dogs or what was going on with his handkerchief. But as soon as somebody walked in to Comet Ping Pong Pizza with an AR-15 and shot one bullet into the floor, then any question that was ever associated with any of that controversy just got shoved over into the tin foil hat lunatic category. So
yeah, that event that was a great way to put it. By the way, Peter, that kind of the differences in pros and cons that probably stick out the most. But yeah, that event certainly, I think people forget it hasn't really been debunked. And there's definitely some crazy ideas going around and behavior as you mentioned, which I think is pretty consistent with stuff that kind of happens similar to it. I know it's a pretty unique event, but yeah, that's I think something that I certainly forgot was probably the biggest point is that there really hasn't been any debunking of that whole thing, even though the mainstream wants to claim otherwise.
Well, debunk seems to be a word that you can just attach to things, that the mainstream media attaches to things if they don't want to talk about it or they want everybody to think that only dumb people talk about that stuff. So,
but it also, I mean, that one didn't really go the debunked route. I don't think it went this is too dangerous to have discussions about because look, some guy walked in there with a gun. So just everybody shut up.
Yeah.
Right. No, yeah. If you don't shut up, we're going to ban you off social media. That was really kind of the very first mass banning, I think, of social media was the P-gate. Let's call it the P-gate.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. And
they shut down the Reddit boards. They shut down the Twitters. I mean, yeah, it vanished. Wow. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I guess in that way, that was kind of a first as far as online censorship. Although we're quite used to that now. I actually didn't recall anybody ever stating that about that event. So that's pretty interesting. And then yeah, it was actually a big part of this documentary called "The Fall of the Cabal," which I think I reposted on a few of my channels. But I recall that being it was actually tied into the old the letter of the alphabet.
Yeah, I don't think that I've watched it because I don't see the cabal falling. I see a lot of noise about them falling. I see a lot of T-shirts and posters and things about them falling. I see lots of Instagram posts about them falling. I don't see them falling. Last time I checked, Joe Biden, who's completely incapacitated, is still the president of the United States. Kamala Harris is still
though, Peter, or has he been replaced by a clone? Like to Addy's point, they talk about all these people. There are people that believe this. I've heard these conversations, and you know what? I'm willing to entertain it. I think it's interesting. Why not? Crazy stuff.
I think it's interesting too, but I think it all depends on the framework that you look at things. Sure. So if you assume, I mean, I was telling Tracy before we started the show that I'm reading this book by this guy named Mills called The Power Elite that was written in 1950. Where this guy is kind of the first mainstream author that contended that the United States is just kind of a skin suit that's being worn by a bunch of business and banking interests in order to get the demos, to get the people who are voting in the United States of America to believe that this is the thing that's being used in order to rule them. We're not ruled by the government. We're ruled by this shadow government. We're controlled by the government. The government is a tool that's being used, and we are fooled into believing that because we vote, that our vote has some kind of an impact on this thing, where I think there's a lot of evidence that, starting around the 1912 election and like culminating just now in 2020, that our whatever it is that people refer to as mud democracy is just a Santa Claus myth. It doesn't really exist.
Well, and it's like thinking that voting for different prison guards is going to change the fact that you're in prison is pretty sad and silly.
That's a new one.
Is that a libertarian cliche?
No, I was just thinking about how you're describing it, and they are the ones that maintain the prison. It's open air for the most part now, at least in my state. Right. But they did tell us not to leave your cell for a long time, and people just went along. So tell me they're not prison guards for the elite, the cabal that won't fall or may fall.
Yeah. Yeah, and that distinction you just made there, what actually reminds me of a tweet I just saw that I got a bunch of favorites, and somebody said the FBI is out of control, and I didn't respond, but I almost did. I was like thinking, well, the FBI is actually in very firm control of the deep state. They know exactly what they're doing with that agency. So I think that's pretty much the same idea as the point you made.
Yeah, it's about your frame, right? It's about whether or not you believe that the United States government is in control of things, or whether or not you think that the United States government is just a device that somebody else controls, that's being used in order to control us. You know,
and it's possible that some of the controllers are in the actual government.
Sure. Well, they kind of have to be, right?
Because they have the handlers in there.
Right. You have to have the people with their hands on the controls, right?
Yeah.
There's this guy, Ron Klain, who's Joe Biden's chief of staff, who back in the day when I think 2008, it was reported that Ron Klain was the one who told him that he was Joe Biden, that he was not going to be president and that he needed to get out of the race. And probably my guess is that he probably was directly involved in the making sure that Joe Biden would become Barack Obama's vice president. That was the deal that was cut. But this guy Ron, and if you don't remember when Ebola was a thing, which another bioweapon psyop, thing, when Obama named the Ebola czar, Addy's gimbal is dying there. When Obama named the Ebola czar, the guy who was going to get to the bottom of the Ebola thing and all that other stuff, it was Ronald Klain. There he is.
I don't know much about this character, Peter. Could you?
Well, I just remember back in the day. I just remember it from back in my Got News days that we were, we found his page on Flickr, I think, and there were all kinds of pictures of him like at the shooting range with his shotguns shooting clays and stuff. And I was thinking, oh, this is the anti-Second Amendment. The guy who's controlling the anti-Second Amendment party, like, out shooting things with his shotgun. Like, he shouldn't be doing that.
Well, Biden did say use a shotgun. That's the acceptable home defense.
That's
Remember, go outside and fire it in the air.
I saw that, and somebody, as a response, they made a video where they edited clips together of people shooting shotguns and getting blown back, from the kickback, and then they showed some like a small woman shooting an AR-15, and they have like no kick. So because I think he made a point that it was like safer or easier or something like that.
Yeah, well, Dick Cheney shot a judge in the face, didn't he?
Yeah, the judge lived.
Yeah,
he
lived.
There you go. Proved Biden's point. It's much safer.
I wonder. It would be interesting to take a look at the history of that judge's rulings before and after the shotgun to the face.
Like the post. Weren't they? They're going pheasant hunting, weren't they, or something?
Yeah,
like that?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's like the apex or watershed moment of the pheasant hunting trip with Dick Cheney. Forever changed the way that judges behave.
Right. Maybe. Well. Yeah. I don't know if that was as important, but like there was one quote. I'm looking for the quote from the book that I tweeted out earlier about blackmail. I'll just paraphrase it. Somebody in your book said that if you start to look at the world through the frame of blackmail, that a lot of decisions that don't really make sense suddenly do make sense. And when I read that, the first thing that I thought of was John Roberts and the Obamacare decision at the Supreme Court. It's like, okay, well, who's got the book on John Roberts, right?
Yeah, that was I think Charlie Robinson who said that, if I'm not mistaken, and he was making the point. I think in this context, he was talking about business deals is the I think the term he used, but bad deals, he said, as you look back, make more sense if they are understood through the blackmail lens or the blackmail framework of understanding, kind of that class of people. Because Ryan makes the point too, which I probably should have made in the book, that you can't really blackmail poor people, as far as
You have to have something to lose.
Yeah.
yeah, like someone who has nothing to lose, you can't blackmail them, right? But you can give them $100 and they'll probably go do quite a bit for you, believe it or not. So he makes that distinction between that wealthy elite billionaire, multimillionaire class who they don't think about money the same way, right? It's like kind of like ratios too, in like fractions. Like a tenth of my income is quite a bit for me, but for them it's like, you'd have to give me $1 billion for me to get paid off. But if you blackmail somebody, that's much more effective, because I think they are actually a lot more reliant upon their own reputations. Those really powerful people, really rich people, whereas poor people, they just have to do their jobs, and it doesn't really matter what the public at large thinks of them. So I think that's another reason that blackmail is much more effective on those people.
So what's the big lesson that you took away from writing about all these people?
It took longer than I thought. The book did. It definitely took longer than I thought. It took a lot longer than I thought. That was probably the most difficult thing, was I guess just the amount of actual typing that dictates, but not just that. It's like the collating of the information and the research as well. But I guess the one big takeaway on the book itself and the ideas in it were, I don't know. I mean, I guess a simple distinction I make for the idea is that it's not just open source intelligence. There are also whistleblower intelligence, I think falls under this umbrella of public intelligence, as I delineate in the book. And as well, some people, like Anna Breeze, has this idea for new media, which is a good term, and I think she's the one that coined it, but it's not as kind of focused as
I don't know if we just lost him.
Did we lose him?
entities like Jeff Epstein, for example, who I also mentioned in the book. So just a couple ideas there.
Yeah, we lost you there for about 30 seconds, and your picture is kind of breaking up. Maybe should we do shadow puppets, or?
Yeah.
You guys are back. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't really see you. Your signal seems to be bouncing off of Mars or something.
That is weird. I have been having connection issues today. I don't know what's up with that, but I can see and hear you guys now. You guys
do you want to try disconnecting and then reconnecting?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. I'll go fix something real quick, and then I'll join right back.
Well, anyway, there we go. Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about, Tracy, you and I were talking about earlier, is that there's I'm trying to remember what the reference was to Gawker in the book that you and I were talking about.
It was Epstein's Black Book.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Epstein's Black Book was one of the people that Addy interviews in the book, published Epstein's Black Book through Gawker. And I thought that was interesting. It piqued my interest because I know from having worked at Got News with Chuck Johnson and the kind of machinations with Ryan Holiday's book on Gawker and Hulk Hogan, and I was wondering whether or not the Hulk Hogan Peter Thiel story about taking Gawker out had as much to do with Peter Thiel and Hulk Hogan as it did to do with Jeffrey Epstein, or like payback for
Maybe.
This complete flyer. I have no.
Right. And I think who was it that got the black book? I feel like I heard them recently on something, but I think they tried to shop it to other outlets, and it was only Gawker that would publish it. Nobody else wanted to go anywhere near it.
Well, when Addy rejoins us, let me see if I can find the names.
Remembering correctly how that all went down.
I can. You know what? I probably can hit search and put in Epstein.
There we go.
Epstein. Oh, now it says indexing. Anyway, so so much for telecommunications in 2021.
That could be storms. It is super hot on the East Coast today, and he's further south than I am, and it's 103 degrees here, or was.
103 degrees in Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
That's what my car says. My watch says it's 97.
I'm looking outside. It looks like it's about 75 here.
That's great. You still live in California?
California, yes.
Yes. That's where you're going to get masked up again because there's the Delta variant.
I made a meme that had Samuel L. Jackson holding the gun saying, "Say Delta variant one more time."
Yeah, please.
Oh, wait, here, I think I have it and I can share it.
Oh, good.
Well, we're waiting to see if Addy actually rejoins us.
Well, I want to see, that I'm trying to be optimistic about everything, and I feel like I'm seeing major fissures in the dam in the last week and a half with the mainstream narrative. Nice.
Yeah, so what fissures are you seeing?
It started with Brett Weinstein having those back-to-back podcasts on his YouTube that got banned with doctors talking about...
Oh, was there more than one? Because I listened to one that was like 2 hours and 40 minutes that was fascinating.
There was a second one.
Yeah.
So the first one was with Dr. Pierre Corey, and he's the guy that testified in front of the Senate months ago, talking about these protocols. And I don't even know if we're allowed to say the name of the damn drugs on YouTube because of how sensitive they've become to it. It starts with an I and ends with ectin. So that conversation was interesting to me, and knowing that his audience, he reaches the left as well as the right. Weinstein does, I would imagine.
I think it's arguable that he probably reaches way more of the left than the right. Yeah.
And so that came out, and then on the heels of that, he had on, and I'm going to forget these two gentlemen's name, but the guy that created the technology, mNRA technology.
Right.
And another gentleman who I don't believe is a doctor, but has just done a ton of research. And they were on to talk about the vaccines. And they said they both got them. Brett has not. He's been taking the eye drug instead. And they were horrified by what they've come to learn about these things. And then they're terrified that this information is not being shared. And so they're ringing the bells. And I believe that one's been taken down now too. And the Weinsteins have moved their podcast off of YouTube. They're still going to live there as much as they can, but they've moved to Odyssey, where we are too, in case we get the ban. So then Joe Rogan decided to move up the date when he was going to have Brett on his podcast next, I think by a couple weeks. He thought, like, this is an emergency broadcast. So it was Brett and Dr. Corey just to talk about this drug. And then from there, Brett bounced over to Lex Friedman's podcast, again, to talk about the same thing. And follow that up with the Jon Stewart clip where he's on Colbert. And you can see Colbert as like the caricature of the narrative that just doesn't want to let go. And he's so horrified.
That is like, it was such a telling little clip because, Stewart launched Colbert. And Colbert was basically sitting in Stewart's chair that was given to him by Stewart. And then Colbert was obviously torn because he's trying to control Jon Stewart. He doesn't want him to say what he's saying, but he also has to, kind of honor the fact that that's, how he got there. So here's Addy. Let's see if we can get Addy back.
I'm back. Can you guys hear
me? All
me?
right. Yes, we can.
Okay. Excellent. Should be good.
All right. Did you get hit by a hurricane or something?
What's that?
No sing. Are you in Florida?
No, I'm in Georgia. I'm in I'm not really close to the city though. I'm kind of south of Atlanta right now. But yeah, it's beautiful though. It's I hung out with some horses the other day, so that was pretty great. I've never actually interacted with horses before, so it's great hanging out with some southern Georgian horses here. As I've been investigating Atlanta, I met up with Heather Mullins. Speaking of my book, she makes an appearance in my book as well for the armed ballot trafficking story that I did in the election 2020 season, which made its way to the front page of the Gateway Pundit, mostly probably thanks to Patrick Byrne tweeting it out. He actually got his account terminated very soon after that happened. So who knows? Maybe I'm responsible for getting Patrick Byrne terminated off Twitter. But he is in the book as well, and I talk about it in Amber Connor's chapter on citizen intelligence, who is another great primary source that I am actually still making use of. This week, I just met with Miss Connor, and we had some great conversations, and we're probably going to meet up at least once more before I head out of Georgia. But yeah, that's what I wanted to mention as far as election stuff. And then Fulton County as well is kind of a focus for Heather Mullins. So she has been following up on the kind of election audit here in the county. And there's this guy, he's kind of the head of, I believe it's election integrity for the state. His name's Garland Favorito. He's actually been in the news quite a bit on like Zero Hedge, I think. And I think actually the Gateway Pundit also covered him a few times as he was given updates on it because it was quite funny seeing this story on Fox. It made it sound like the case is going ahead. And then you heard it on CNN and you heard the opposite. So it was pretty weird. It's one of those weird stories. And they're both, I think, kind of true because the judge, I guess, said no to certain stuff and yes to other stuff. I don't know the full details on what exactly the discussion was as far as material being brought forward. But from everybody I talked to here, it's good news for those who are in favor of a good election audit. And there's this judge, his name is, I think it's Judge Amaro. I can't remember his first name, but the consensus seems to be that people like him and he seems to be making fair decisions. So that's good news, I think, for the people of Fulton County and the Atlanta area, which also it has been in the news nationwide because Buckhead wants to secede from Greater Atlanta, one of the richest, I think it's top three wealthiest counties in the United States is Buckhead. And the crime there is pretty much out of control in Atlanta. It's pretty crazy. There's people like they do these street races at night. And so there's this whole kind of sub culture, like a night culture, it's street culture where they have these racing cars with lights on them. It kind of reminds me of the Fast and Furious film series, like the first ones when it was, actually about underground night racing. And speaking of that, I didn't know this, but the actor Tyrese Gibson, who plays Rome, I think in the second one, he has recently shown support for, I think it's Reed. Reed is his name. He's trying to win the mayoral election this year and unseat Keisha Bottoms, Mayor Bottoms, who has been the mayor for, I think, this several years now, just one term, I want to say. And most people that I talk to are not really in favor of this guy Reed becoming mayor. He kind of seems quite establishment. So it was pretty disappointing as a former Too Fast, Too Furious fan to see Tyrese Gibson kind of standing with the institutions there. But I can't say
let me ask you this: does it really matter? I mean, do we care? I mean, I'm listening to all of this, and I'm not trying to be glib, but when we listen to, so imagine that all of the states that are in contention, Michigan and Arizona and Georgia and all these states where there's claimed election fraud. Imagine that we find out that a couple months from now, okay, indeed there was election fraud in all of these states. Unfortunately, there is no mechanism in the Constitution of the United States to do anything about that because the people have already been elected and the elections have already been certified. And if anybody thinks that John Roberts' Supreme Court is going to go and hand an election uh, uh, to Donald Trump, I mean, that's just kind of like la la land. That said, all of these local elections where the establishment are in firm control, for me, from where I'm sitting, to me it's just more confirmation that the systems that we have in place that we think are there to help us are actually being used as weapons against us, and that it's much better, I think, for people to just come to terms with the fact that things don't exist, that the constitutional form of government that we're led to believe is ruling us isn't really in place. I mean, I listen to the street racing and I think of Snow Crash and Tracy's anarcho-capitalist world where, in some places street racing happens because guess what? Nobody's going to do anything about it,
Or it's legal there. That's the street racing blurb.
Burbclave.
Yeah.
Burbclave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, Addy, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Buckhead wants to secede from Atlanta because why? So then they can have their own police force or something? Build a wall around Buckhead?
Yeah, they want. I think that's the biggest issue is the security. So a law enforcement and the local crime does seem to be concentrating there at a higher rate. I mean, I've had people tell me they aim for there because that's the rich people, right? It is the rich people. It's one of the richest counties in the nation. So because of that, they are targets for crime in a way that residential, occupants or people in the populace are really aren't. And I think we've kind of seen that pattern before in 2020. Like with the McCloskeys in St. Louis, who I think they actually both just pled to misdemeanors. I think one each, like a week or two ago, for that whole thing when they were, just trying to defend the property. As far as I could see, I mean, you could be a really stickler and say that the woman was brandishing, but it's there's a bunch of dudes outside her house, and it's a middle-aged woman, so it's like, maybe you can let that one slide, but. Obviously, there's, I think, it's almost like I heard it put once, like the justice system is a formality, like after the fact, and whatever the social climate is, that dictates your sentence before you even get to see a judge or even get to really get into the system at all, which I think is pretty accurate, actually.
Right. So I see statements like this, and it's like, I just think this is wrong. Okay. Certified fraud is still fraud. If we have an intelligence, we don't have an intelligent military. We don't. Okay. That's like, this is clown world. I'm sorry. It's not correct. The correction is not going to be forthcoming. It's certainly not going to be forthcoming from the military.
Yeah. And when you say this, people get really upset. I think similar to the reaction you get when you either praise Trump or criticize Trump. In this instance, the context would make sense to use the example of criticism, which I think we both are, I think, Peter, as far as I know, at this point in the game. And my point with what you just said is I did that. And then I think like a former supporter, I think, turned on me publicly. And I think that had something to do with it, is because I was criticizing that kind of believed the plan, but it was probably more so about Trump. But yeah, it's crazy. I think it's fear, man. I think people are so afraid that they don't want to.
Look, I mean, here's Hunter's crack pipe makes a good point there. We are the plan. If you think the military is going to go do something, put your head between your knees and kiss your ass goodbye. I mean,
they'll put up the fences around the Capitol and protect those guys.
Yeah, it's like not going to. Yeah, that's right. The military did that.
Yeah, they slept in parking garages.
Right. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is talking about critical race theory. Right. It's like,
oh my goodness. Yeah, is that Milley? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, Milley. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If there's a general that was ever compromised, it's got to be that guy. That I saw that and I was like, it was like a double take, because there's somebody in my family who's been in the military the whole time that I've been alive, so I know how like quiet military guys act and kind of how they think a little bit. And I don't know, it's weird seeing a military man saying that sort of stuff that's just not relevant to battle, to military battle or informational battle. So, but when you look at it from the lens that it's part of the informational battle, maybe it starts to make more sense. But maybe that's a little more self-directed or Smith-Munt-esque.
Potentially. I think that to jump back to the discussion about the people that are still clinging to this idea that these elections will be overturned and everything will be magically right back to where it was, Trump will be put back into office. This is no different to me than how the left behaved the whole time that Trump was in office with the Russia stuff. Oh, they're going to get him. This is the next shoe. The walls are closing in, and he's going to be found out and dragged out of office, kind of deal. And we will be saved from this guy. So it's an inability to accept reality and move forward and look for other things to do. So you have to internalize that we are the damn plan. So figure it out. And people are starting to push back. And I do think I've been watching these videos of the parents at school board meetings and just cheering them on. Like, that's great. And I thought, what would it look like if Dr. Fauci had to sit down in front of the public and take questions? I mean, I kind of think some of that energy is being directed into these school board meetings where you can actually get at these people. And you see them too in like city hall council meetings, those kind of things where the public actually interacts with these guys. So there's going to be something where it reaches ahead, I think.
Yeah, Sundance over at the Conservative Treehouse, his Twitter handle is The Last Refuge 2, did a really great thread about 4 or 5 days ago on what he was calling extreme federalism. And to your point, Tracy, I mean, it's interesting because he posted that on the same day that Curtis Yarvin posted a really good blog post on what he thinks. I mean, both of them are coming to terms with the fact that the system is fundamentally broken and it's not working, and they have opposite solutions, both of which sound good, and one of which Curtis Yarvin suggests that the president actually act like FDR and really become a dictator in order to put things right. And I think that we probably had the bite of that apple with Trump, and he failed. And I'm not sure that we ever get another bite at that apple. There isn't anybody who's going to run for office saying that he's going to drain the swamp that we're ever going to believe again, because Steve Mnuchin and John Bolton and all of these other people that Trump brought into his administration, Jared Kushner. I mean, you need anybody who's ever been to a Council on Foreign Relations meeting, anybody who's ever been to Bilderberg or to Davos, like, they need to be out of the administration.
As a family member that's been in those things.
Or a family member. Yeah, look, Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray's not in the Council on Foreign Relations, but his father's been in the Council on Foreign Relations for 50 years. It's like, if you want to drain the swamp, Trump should have gone in there and fired anybody whose rank is higher than a colonel. Yeah. Like, just get really just get rid of all.
Like John McAfee was our last hope, or right. Somebody in that mold. It's got to be somebody that's totally on the outside that just sees the system and has had the system screw with them and is willing to fight back and not give a damn. And look what they did to him. And right. That's just my opinion. So that was Curtis Yarvin's, suggestion. And again, if there was a charismatic candidate that could show up like Trump and grab that much power again, that would be great. I can't imagine it happening. And the problem with dictators is that they're not always going to make you happy in what they're going to decide. So it's fraught with peril. So I think that the only option that we really do have is kind of this extreme federalism component. And the danger of it is that what the globalists really want, and it's the reason why, to your point, Tracy, the Russiagate versus Q people things are so dangerous, is because every single one of these programs is designed to break us into as many constituent parts as possible. And that all plays into the globalist
agenda. They want the United States to seem that it's completely out of control. And, Nancy Pelosi is already talking about having the nuclear codes being controlled by a committee. And is that because they see the United States being torn asunder like the Soviet Union, and that all of the people who are in the United States military suddenly have to put on blue helmets, right, in order to come in and put down the insurrection that they're claiming happened, that started on January 6th with no weapons. Like, it's a very odd insurrection, Somebody had a noose. Somebody had a scaffolding that was built out of 3 2x4s and a piece of clothesline, and that was the big threat.
Bunch of old people, children, bunch of women. Yeah, kind of a weird insurrection. Not to mention the no weapons, or the lack of weapons. But I think you're probably right on that, Peter. Will another Trump-like figure emerge in our lifetimes? I think you're right. I don't think. Not so far as one to defeat the deep state. Certainly not in our lifetimes. Maybe for another reason. Who knows? But I actually thought about that too, with regards to the power of the executive branch. It makes me think of the movie Gladiator, where Marcus Aurelius wants to give power and turn it from basically an empire to a republic before he's killed by his son, obviously. But what was the other option? That was one option, right? Was like a dictator.
One option was that you have the president. One of the things that drove me crazy about Trump is he would complain about Twitter or complain about social media. Barack Obama made the internet part of the FCC during his administration. So. And all of the article, is it 230, 270, 230? I can't remember the number.
230. Yeah.
So 230. Here's the thing. The only thing that really needed to happen is that Donald Trump could have picked up the phone and said to Ajit Pai, I need you to send a letter to Twitter and Facebook and Google and tell them that they have violated their Section 230 protection under the FCC code, and that they no longer had protection from the, what's the name of the law? The 1997 Bill Clinton.
Everybody knows the internet.
Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So send them a letter. Tell them that they've violated Section 230, that they are no longer protected by Section 230 under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and that anybody who wants to sue them can sue them. The president could have written a letter. It could have just been done.
He doesn't even have to write it. He just has to tell somebody to write a letter.
He could tell Ajit Pai to write the letter and then let the courts sort it out, because that's what the Democrats do, right? Mm-hmm. He never understood that he had that power, right? He never understood that he could just tell all the people who are members of SES, you're fired. He never understood that he had the ability to tell all of the attorney generals that are in all of the different districts of the federal court system, you're fired. Bill Clinton did it. He fired everybody that George Herbert Walker Bush appointed on the first day in office. That's what a real president does. Donald Trump was not doing any of that stuff. He wasn't doing what real presidents do. He was going along to getting along, and that's not how you affect change. That's certainly not how you drain the swamp. So you asked me what were the two choices. One is a president taking full advantage of the presidency, okay, and being dictatorial, okay. Barack Obama got lots of criticism for doing it, but I thought he was within his rights. I did personally. As a president, because that's the problem with the presidency. It's basically a dictator for 4 years, and then if he chooses to be, and then the second alternative is extreme federalism, which is just organizing in your neighborhood and going down to the local school board, going to the city council, and telling them we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, And if you want election integrity, start there. Okay, because it's a lot easier to fix the elections in your neighborhood than it is in the state or the federal government. So those are the two choices. One is extreme federalism. If you go look at Sundance at the Conservative Treehouse, the Last Refuge 2 at Twitter. He's
I
got a
think he
thread.
also posted an article on it too. I think he kind of he's playing off of that theme, and I agree.
Right.
It's the only way to change any of this stuff.
Oh wow, yeah. I thought I was following him, but I'll double check after the show to make sure I am. And yeah, that other option you actually mentioned ties into something I was going to bring up a few minutes ago as well. When I was at this, I think it was last night or maybe it was the night before. I was at this. I think it was Women for America First, Fulton County meeting, and there was quite a few people there, and a couple reps and politicians, and yeah, there was a part of the crowd that were very vociferous with their discontent and the transparency of the election. Really, I think was the root cause of the discontent and kind of the topic of the meeting. I actually recorded it. I'll probably, if I can get my my internet going good tonight, I'll upload it later. I think it was, I didn't do 4K just because it takes up too much space and time. But I do have it in 1080p, and there's this lady that stood up and like started making getting a little bit, you know, just a little too excited for such an event. And anyways, it was a bit of a ruckus for a second there because people were just like expressing themselves and they were like passing the mic around and stuff. So yeah, I recorded that, and it made me think of that kind of, you know, complaining to the local power, whoever that is. Yeah, but you know, it's to offer a compliment to Major Prather, because we were a bit critical earlier. A neighbor up, as he says, neighbor up. Know who your neighbors are. It's a bit harder for me because I'm traveling most of the time, but I still try to do it, you know. And even if it's someone at the gas station or whatever.
Yeah, James Corbett is making the same recommendations too. It's like build your own personal network. Get to know the people around you who believe the things that you believe. And when I say around you, like imagine that your phone's not working and your, you know, your internet's not working.
Space in your geographical locus of control, right? Whatever that is.
Indeed. So I know you had a hard out, Tracy, soon. So I'm assuming that we should wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut it short, but
no, it's quite all right. We went pretty much an hour, so that was good.
Yeah, it's very good. Anyway, does anybody have any questions?
And tell everybody once again, Addy, where they can pick up the book.
Yeah, you can get on Amazon, and I'm actually going to do probably signed copies soon. That will actually probably be cheaper, depending on how cheap I can get them printed. But I would recommend the paperback if you want all the info, and that's most up to date. The ebook is still pretty much it's probably like 85% the same.
Yeah, you were talking about a bunch of stuff that I didn't remember reading. So and I read the ebook this morning. So
yeah, I recommend the paperback, but I'm looking to get the price down a bit. So whenever I do publish it and print it from the neighborhood news printers, which I anticipate will happen sometime this summer. Otherwise, people can PayPal me too for a signed copy, and I'll be sure to get one to you, whoever messages me personally for one. I can certainly do that. My website is addyadds.one, addyadds.one. I'm on Twitter at oneaddyadds, ONE, ADDYADDS. I no longer use Linktree, so I don't plug Linktree because they actually terminated my my account.
What? How? What? I know we're trying to wrap. I know we're trying to wrap up, but why did Linktree ban you?
Yeah, I don't know. I've actually never heard of that happening before. Somebody getting censored off there. I mean, I was just using it for links, you know, link collator.
They're all Australian, right? Linktree.
I actually don't know. Somebody sent me. It was the day I shared that it happened, and somebody sent me who I think the CEO is, which was, I was like, wow, that was quick. But yeah, they booted me off. So, but I'm back on YouTube as well. But all my links are on my website, so addyadds.one, as well as the podcast too. If people want to check that out, it's available anywhere podcasts can be found. Public Intelligence. So yeah, that's what I've been focusing on. Going to be here in Georgia for a little bit longer, I think, before taken off again. So a lot happening here in the Atlanta area. It's a super hub of geopolitics.
All right. Well, thanks for joining today, Addy, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of the new things that you're coming out with, and the updated version of your book. And we'll talk to you later.
Stay frosty, folks. See you later.